So Robert Kennedy Jr., he's no Robert Kennedy. Robert Kennedy Jr. is more like a CIA cover-up, right? He's like the opposite. Robert Kennedy Jr. is like the opposite of Robert Kennedy. He's more like a Martin Luther King III. There's a measles outbreak in Texas. A measles outbreak. How many old diseases are we going to bring to the forefront? Are we going to bring polio back? There's tuberculosis. So we got tuberculosis claims, measles outbreak. An unvaccinated child in West Texas died of measles on Wednesday, marking the first time that somebody's died from the viral illness in the U.S. in a decade. So far, 18 people have been hospitalized for measles around Lubbock. So if you're going to go to Lubbock, Texas, Lubbock, Texas, where a measles outbreak has affected at least 124 people, according to the Texas Department of State Health Services. You shouldn't go. You should not go. We're going to bring back smallpox. What about y'alls? What about scurvy? Y'alls know about scurvy, right? But do y'alls know about y'alls? What about smallpox? It's not unusual. Robert Kennedy Jr. said, look, having measles outbreaks, this isn't unusual. He said of the contagion when pressed by reporters, we have measles outbreaks every year. And then he coughed up some measles right there at the dinner table. He also blamed the Mennonites. So don't worry, everybody. It's just the damn Mennonites that are... Robert Kennedy Jr., the black sheep of the Kennedy clan who traded Camelot for conspiracy theories. This guy's got a voice like a chainsaw gargling gravel angel. And he's out here preaching about vaccines like he's auditioning for the lead role in Anti-Vaxxers. Anti-Vaxxers, the musical. You'd think with the Kennedy family name, he'd aim for something classy like a Senate seat or at least a decent podcast mic, but no, he's too busy chasing chemtrails and yelling about Big Pharma like a guy who just found out his tinfoil hat doubles as a popcorn maker. I bet you he's the type to bring his own chlorine-free water to a dinner party and lecture you about fluoride while you're just trying to enjoy your mashed potatoes. Here's a tip, Bobby. Maybe if you spend less time trying to save us from Wi-Fi and more time figuring out why your cousins won't return your phone calls, you'd be less of a walking meme. This dude's a walking midlife crisis with a Kennedy badge, stumbling through life like he's permanently auditioning for the role of guy who yells at clouds. Robert Kennedy Jr., he's out here with that shredded vocal cord rasp, sounding like a chainsaw stuck in a blender, spewing anti-vax nonsense so unhinged. Even Alex Jones would tell him, don't you think a Kennedy would have some gravitas? But nah, Bobby's too busy chasing imaginary 5G demons and clutching his organic kale smoothie like it's the Holy Grail. Robert Kennedy Jr. is the family disappointment who turned a legacy of power into a one-man circus of paranoia. JFK's rolling in his grave so fast you could hook him up to a turbine and power DC. This clown's got the nerve to act like he's saving humanity while peddling theory so cooked they make QAnon look like a peer-reviewed study. Hey, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., maybe if you stop treating every Wi-Fi router like a Bond villain and spent 5 minutes learning how science works, you wouldn't be the punchline at every Thanksgiving where they still let you sit at the kids' table. Stick to hugging trees and leave the thinking to someone who doesn't think peer review is a craft beer. Robert Kennedy Jr. and his deafening silence on the measles outbreak. He was very silent, but you just had that cabinet meeting, and he was like, measles. We all got measles. Robert Kennedy Jr., the self-appointed savior of public health, is out here treating the measles outbreak like it's a pop-up ad that he could just ignore while he scrolls for his next conspiracy theory. A kid is dead in Texas. Over 120 people are infected with the measles. Hospitals are filling up with preventable cases. And Bobby's response, it's quieter than a mime convention in a library. This guy's got the gall to sit at the head of the Health and Human Services, yet when a real crisis hits, Robert Kennedy Jr. won his anti-vax gospel. When a real crisis hits, won his anti-vax gospel, practically wrote the playbook for. He's as useful as a screen door on a submarine. You'd think with all that Kennedy charisma, he'd at least muster a soundbite, but nope, he's too busy polishing his tinfoil crown and pretending 5G is the real enemy. Robert Kennedy Jr. is the dude who turned Samoa into his personal petri dish, whispering sweet nothings to anti-vaxxers until 83 people, mostly children, died from measles he swore wasn't a big deal. Now with Texas looking like a sequel, Robert Kennedy Jr. is pulling the same move. Eyes shut, mouth zipped, and hands deep in his pockets where his credibility used to be. Not unusual. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. mumbles about the outbreaks like he's commenting on the weather instead of a disease that's spiking because of the vaccine hesitancy. He spent decades fanning. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. so far out of his depth, he's basically a health secretary-shaped paperweight. Except paperweights don't dodge questions about dying kids or shrug off epidemics like they're spilled milk. Maybe Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is just waiting for the measles to text him first, because clearly taking action isn't in his natural experiment playbook. What a champion, leading the charge to make America sick again. One awkward silence at a time. Robert Kennedy Jr. and his bizarre love affair with dead animals. This one's going to get wild. So Robert F. Kennedy, he's a man who'd rather cuddle a corpse than crack a science book, has turned his life into a twisted taxidermy sideshow. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he's got a thing for dead critters that would make Norman Bates blush, whether he's sawing the head off a whale with a chainsaw or posing with a barbecued dog like it's a family portrait. Bobby's out here treating roadkill like it's Tinder. Remember that time he dumped a bear cub's body in Central Park after he picked it up off the highway? Who the hell does that? Most people swerve to avoid a carcass, but not Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He swerves to scoop it up for a romantic evening of felony-level mischief. He's like, oh, a dead bear? That's a perfect centerpiece for my next dinner party. Pass the ketchup. Don't even get me started on the whole whale incident. He's chainsawing a beach corpse while locals are begging him to stop. And then he's going to strap the whale head to his minivan like it's a twisted trophy haul. This dude's got kids in the car with whale juice leaking through the windows, and he's just vibing like it's a Kennedy family trip, Kennedy family road trip tradition. This isn't quirky. This isn't like fun and quirky. This is like serial killer adjacent. Robert F. Kennedy probably got a freezer full of souvenirs labeled "Do Not Eat," sentimental value. Meanwhile, he's preaching about environmental like he didn't just turn a marine mammal into a hood ornament. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the guy who'd see Bambi's mom get shot and ask, "Can I keep the antlers?" So, Bobby F. Kennedy Jr., why don't you just stick to your anti-vax rants? Because your necrophiliac scavenger hunt is giving us all the creeps. Huh?